The strange signal in the ice fields asterisk. The mining outpost sat silent in the middle of the frozen wasteland, buried under snow and thick layers of silence. Only one man lived there, Darren Holt, a technician from Earth, assigned to monitor abandoned alien tech buried beneath the ice. Most days were boring, filled with sensor reports and machine checks. But that morning, the screen blinked with a pulse Darren had never seen before. A strange, smooth wave of sound, rising and falling like a whisper through metal. He leaned closer, eyes narrowing. The signal was coming from the deep northern ice caves, a place where even the robots refused to go. The air was too cold, the magnetic field unstable. No one had entered those caverns for years, not since the last mission vanished. But something about the sound pulled him. Not with fear, but with curiosity. Darren grabbed his thermal suit, flashlight, and recorder, and began walking toward the unknown with heavy steps and foggy breath. The deeper he went, the more the signal grew clearer. It wasn't static anymore. It sounded like a hum, a song, slow and hypnotic. His head felt light, his fingers numb. But he didn't stop. Then he saw it. A giant wall of crystal, glowing faint purple, trapped in a dome of ice. Inside it was a girl, not human, not moving. Her eyes were open and glowing, her body delicate, elegant and alien. She looked about. His age, but her skin shimmered like silver, and her long white hair floated as if underwater. Her body was curled, as if sleeping, but those glowing eyes were watching him, unblinking. Darren's heart pounded. His breath fogged up his helmet. He reached out without thinking and touched the edge of the crystal. It was warm, pulsing gently. Beneath his glove, a soft vibration ran through his body. In that moment, everything went black. 1 second he was staring at her. The next he was waking up on the floor of his own quarters, confused, disoriented, and cold. The clock on the wall said 6 hours had passed. His gloves were still on. His boots still wet from ice. But how did he get back and why couldn't he remember? He sat up slowly, then froze. In the corner of his room, beside the silent heater, stood the alien girl, awake, alive, and staring directly at him with glowing violet eyes. She didn't move, didn't speak, but something inside Darren's mind echoed a voice, soft and female, not with words but with feeling. Mine. It whispered, and he shivered. Who are you? He asked aloud. His voice was dry, unsure. But she didn't answer with sound. Instead, he felt her smile inside his head, like a hand brushing softly across thought. She stepped forward, and with each step, the air felt heavier, not in weight but in tension. Darren's eyes locked with hers, and he couldn't look away. He didn't want to. Something deep inside him began to surrender. He blinked, and suddenly she was right in front of him. Her hand touched his cheek, cool and soft, and the voice inside his mind grew clearer. You brought me back, now I belong to you. He tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The light in her eyes shifted, swirling like smoke and stars. He felt dizzy, lost, warm all over, like falling asleep under heavy blankets. Then just as fast she pulled away, walked to the bed, and sat down quietly, her legs crossed, her head tilted in curiosity, still watching him as if he were some rare creature. He backed up, his mind spinning. What did you do to me? He managed to ask, but she simply blinked and said nothing. Yet he felt it again, that presence, touching his thoughts gently, curling inside like a vine. Darren turned toward the console, hoping to call Earth Command, but the system was offline. No power, no signal. Everything was dark except the lights above her head, glowing from nothing. Did you do this? He whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. Her glowing eyes narrowed slightly, and in his head, he heard another whisper. You're safe with me, human. He felt his knees weaken, his body growing heavier, as if the air itself was sinking into his muscles. Her influence was like gravity, soft but unshakable, and worse, some part of him didn't want to resist. That night, as he lay in bed unable to sleep, he saw her standing at the window, her body lit by moonlight. Her back to him, still and silent, but even with his eyes closed, he could feel her watching. And just before he drifted into unconsciousness, he felt the last whisper of her voice in his mind, calm and slow. "You are mine, Darren, and soon. You will understand." Her voice inside his mind. Darren woke with a sharp breath. The air thick and heavy in his lungs. He looked around quickly, half expecting the alien girl to be gone. But she was still there, sitting calmly at the edge of his room, watching him. With glowing violet eyes, he didn't remember falling asleep, but his body felt like he hadn't moved for days. His arms were stiff, his mind cloudy. The warmth from her presence hadn't faded, it had sunk deeper, wrapping around him like invisible chains. When he sat up, she tilted her head slightly, her eyes flashed once, and Darren felt something press into his thoughts, not painful, not rough, just gentle, like a cool breeze brushing against the inside of his skull. Then her voice came not through the air, but straight into his mind. "You don't need to speak," she said silently. "I hear you better without your words." Her voice was soft, almost loving, but carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Darren tried to speak anyway, his lips moving, but no sound came out. Panic rose for a second, but she calmed it instantly with another pulse of mental warmth. "You're not trapped, you're chosen," she whispered. "You brought me back. What are you?" He thought as hard as he could, and she answered instantly. "I am Sira." Her voice said inside him, "I am of the Virili. We do not speak with sound. We connect with thought, with rhythm, with feeling." Darren stood, wobbling slightly, and moved toward the console again. He tapped the keys. Nothing. Still no signal, no lights. Just her and that strange hum in the air that never stopped. "You broke everything," he thought, anger pushing through his confusion. Her smile remained unchanged. "No," she answered. "You disconnected everything when you touched the crystal. You opened the gate, you called to me." He stared at her, feeling her presence like a second heartbeat in his chest. He couldn't lie around her, couldn't even hide thoughts for long, every time he tried. She simply peeled them open, slowly, carefully, like she was tasting him. "You're not human," he whispered aloud, breaking through the haze for a moment. And she nodded, still without speaking. "No, but I have studied you long before. I slept. Your kind fascinates me." Sira stood and walked slowly toward him, her bare feet making no sound on the metal floor. She stopped just inches from him and reached out, touching his forehead with one finger. Darren's vision exploded into color. He saw images, memories, not his own massive cities of glass and light. Alien skies burning with twin suns, beings like Sira floating above crowds, their eyes glowing like stars. He fell to his knees, shaking, gasping for breath. When the vision faded, she knelt beside him, her voice returning gently inside his head. "Do you see now? You touched my prison. So I touched your soul. What do you want from me?" He managed to ask, his voice trembling. Sira tilted her head again, eyes narrowing with interest. "Not your pain," she said. "Not your fear, only your surrender." The words hit like thunder. Darren backed away. But she didn't follow. Instead, she sat on the floor, watching him with calm eyes, as if waiting for something deeper than a reaction. She didn't speak for hours, not with voice or thought. Darren tried to block her out, put on music, hum to himself. Even tried a neural patch to break psychic waves, but none of it worked. She was already inside. Every time he looked at her, something inside him melted. Not with weakness, but a strange hunger. Like part of him wanted to be close to her, wanted to listen, obey, disappear into her. That night, when he closed his eyes, he felt her again, but differently. Not as a command, not as a presence, but as warmth. A hand brushing his hair. A whisper of comfort in a world of frozen silence. "You are mine," she whispered again. But this time, it felt less like control and more like belonging. Darren's heart beat faster, and he didn't know if it was from fear or something else. Something darker. In his dream, She held him close beneath the crystal sky, her skin glowing against his. She whispered things he couldn't remember upon waking, but he felt them in his chest like a fire still burning. When he woke again, she was already there sitting, watching, smiling as if she never left. Darren sat up slowly, rubbing his face, feeling strange and hollow and full all at once. And this time, he didn't ask questions, didn't demand answers. He simply stared into her eyes and let her voice fill his thoughts again, like water filling a quiet room. A toy, a throne, a thrall. Darren didn't know how long he had been awake. The days were starting to blur. Time no longer followed a clock, it followed her. When she moved, he moved. When she slept, he stayed still, afraid to wake her. Sira now walked the station like it belonged to her. Her bare feet touched the floor softly, but Darren could feel it every time she entered a room. She didn't just walk, she commanded, like a queen walking through her throne room. She had changed clothes. Now, wearing a silver robe made from alien fabric he had never seen before. It shimmered in the light, clinging to her like flowing water. Darren didn't know where she found it, or if she had created it with her mind. Each day, she made small requests. "Bring me water," she whispered inside his mind. "Sit by me, speak your thoughts." He obeyed every time without thinking. Like her voice erased doubt before it could form. But those requests became tests. She asked him to kneel when no one else was around. Then she made him lie on the cold floor while she stared down at him. His body moved before his brain caught up, and she smiled every time he didn't resist. "You're still thinking like a human," she told him, brushing her fingers down his arm one evening. "Always asking why, always wondering if this is right or wrong." Her voice was soft, but her eyes were sharp, glowing brighter than before. "You want to control everything," she continued. "But control is a cage. You could be more than a tool, more than a man, if you let go." Darren stared at her, trying to understand. But the more she spoke, the more he just wanted to obey. One night, she had him sit beside her in silence. Then she turned and placed his hand on her chest, right above her heart. He felt it beat, not fast, but deep, like a drum echoing from far below the earth. "This is my rhythm," she said inside his mind. "Your thoughts are loud, sharp, filled with fear, but your touch is honest." Darren tried to pull away, but she held his wrist and whispered, "Stay." And he did. She leaned in closer, her face near his, her breath warm against his cheek. "I want your body," she said, "but I want you will more." That sentence wrapped around his brain like chains wrapped in silk. He backed away, struggling to think clearly. "You're playing with me," he said out loud, his voice shaking. But she only laughed, a sound that echoed with both music and danger. "Of course I am," she said. "You are my toy." Darren's heart raced, his fists clenched, but then, as she stood and turned away from him, something broke in him, not anger, but longing. He didn't want her to stop watching him, didn't want her attention to fade. That night, he locked himself in the control room, tried again to send a signal back to Earth, but the system still wouldn't connect. His own thoughts shouted in his mind, trying to push her voice out, but her whispers were always louder. "You fight because you care," she said as if reading his mind, "but you've already lost. You just haven't accepted it yet." He covered his ears, but it didn't matter. Her voice wasn't in the air, it was in him. She found him curled up hours later, eyes bloodshot, brain pulsing from strain. She sat beside him without speaking and simply placed her hand on his head. The pressure vanished instantly, like she had turned off pain with a switch. "Poor thing," she whispered. "So much fear, so much pride. All of it pointless when I already see what you are beneath it all." He didn't move, didn't speak. Just let the warmth of her presence wash over him. Sira began to smile more after that, like she had discovered something precious. She no longer needed to give orders. Darren moved before she asked. He listened to her moods, responded to her touch, and followed her like shadow follows flame. One morning, she sat on his bed, legs crossed, hands folded, and asked, "Do you know the difference between a slave and a servant?" Darren blinked, confused. "A slave is forced," she said, "but a servant? A true servant chooses." "You're not a slave," she said with pride. "You are a throne I sit upon because you let me." Darren didn't know whether to feel insulted or honored, but his body answered before his mind could. He knelt in front of her and whispered, "Yes, Sira." Dreams that don't feel like dreams. Darren woke up gasping, sweat pouring from his skin like he had run for miles. The bed beneath him was cold, but the warmth of a presence still clung to the air. His hands trembled as he wiped his face, but he wasn't sure if the wetness was from sweat or tears. He looked across the room and saw Sira sitting calmly on the floor. Her silver robe pooled around her like water, her eyes already locked on him. He hadn't heard her enter, hadn't felt her touch, but somehow he knew she had been in his mind. The dream still haunted him. It wasn't like normal dreams. There was no randomness, no chaos. It had been clear. Too clear. Sira's voice, her hands, her body pressing into his, whispering ancient words he didn't understand but felt inside his bones. "You were dreaming of me," she said without moving her lips. Her voice curled into his skull like smoke through cracks. But that was no dream. It was memory shared, thought to thought. Darren's heart thumped hard in his chest. He stood, pacing in confusion. "You entered my dreams," he said. "That's not fair." But she only smiled with calm confidence. "You let me in," she replied. "You don't realize it, but you want me inside your mind." He tried to deny it, tried to shout back, but no words left his throat. She stood and walked closer, and the dream returned instantly, her body against his, her eyes glowing, her breath brushing across his skin in places that still tingled. "You can't do that again," he whispered, his voice shaky. "I need my mind to be mine." Sira tilted her head. "Then don't think of me when you sleep," she said gently. "But you will, because I'm the only one who sees you completely." That night he took a sedative, tried to block everything out. He wrapped his head in damp cloth, put on old music, and lay with his back to the room. But the moment he closed his eyes, she was there again, smiling under alien stars. In the dream, he was standing in a silver field, and she walked toward him wearing nothing but starlight. He couldn't look away, couldn't move. Her voice was thunder and silk, saying, "You belong in my arms, where your thoughts can rest." He wanted to run, but his legs didn't respond. Not because they were weak, but because part of him didn't want to escape. The dream felt safer than reality, warmer than his own skin, clearer than the waking world. When he woke up the next day, the world felt dull. The lights were dimmer, the air colder. Even his own reflection in the metal wall looked like a stranger. But Sira was brighter, more vivid than anything else. She approached with a soft expression, as if sensing the confusion growing inside him. "I am not stealing your mind," she said calmly. "I am sharing mine." And Darren realized something terrifying. He could feel her emotions too. Her loneliness hit him like cold wind. Her hunger for touch, for connection, for meaning after years locked in ice. He felt it as clearly as his own thoughts. "You were alone," he whispered, and she nodded slowly. "I waited so long," she said, "not for a servant, not for a pet, but for someone whose mind wouldn't shatter when I entered." Her voice trembled slightly, just for a second. Then she looked away. "You're still here because you're stronger than I expected." That moment shifted everything. Darren no longer saw her as just a manipulator, a predator. Now she was also a prisoner of her own gifts, someone so powerful that touching others meant destroying them, unless they were strong enough to hold her. He sat beside her quietly, not speaking, just breathing, letting the silence between them speak louder than words. She didn't push, didn't enter his thoughts, just sat beside him, fingers brushing his, eyes soft and glowing. When he slept that night, the dream returned, but it was different. They were in a room filled with mirrors, and every reflection showed them together, but in different ways, laughing, arguing, kissing, fighting. always connected. He reached out to touch one of the reflections, and it pulsed with warmth. Then he heard her voice, clear and close. "These are not illusions, these are possibilities." Darren turned to her, and she stepped into his arms. Not as a queen, but as equal. As the dream faded, and morning light spilled across the station floor, Darren opened his eyes slowly and found her curled beside him. For the first time, asleep, her body pressed against his, breathing softly like a human, trusting and unguarded. And as he stared at the ceiling, his mind no longer sure where dreams ended or began, he realized something simple but impossible to ignore. He didn't want her to leave. The breaking point. Darren sat in the corner of the control room, knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide and unfocused. He hadn't eaten in over a day, hadn't slept without seeing her in his dreams. His body was still his, but his mind felt like rented space. Sira moved through the halls like a goddess in a forgotten temple, every light reacting to her presence, every screen blinking when she passed. She never touched the controls. But things changed anyway. Doors opened for her. Systems hummed when she looked at them. He watched her from behind corners now, no longer as a man but as a captive unsure of what part of himself still belonged to him. He wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for release, but the words never formed. They never reached his throat. Then came the moment he snapped. It was small, almost laughable. She reached for his hand, and he pulled away. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something sharper, clarity. Her expression changed for the first time. The glow in her eyes flickered. Her fingers stopped midair, and in that frozen second, the air itself felt heavier, colder, like she had drawn back every bit of warmth in the room. "Why?" she asked, not with words in his head, but out loud. Her voice cracked slightly, and Darren felt a pang of guilt he didn't expect. But he stayed still, jaw clenched, breath shallow. "You're in everything," he said. "My sleep, my thoughts, my skin. I don't know who I am anymore when you're near." His hands shook, but his voice stayed firm. "I need to remember what I feel like without you." Sira looked at him like a mother watching a child walk into fire. Her eyes no longer glowed with comfort. They burned, slow and dangerous. "You asked for connection," she whispered. "You brought me back. You opened your mind." Darren didn't answer. Instead, he reached into a small drawer and pulled out a device, a neural jammer, an outdated but legal tool used to block psychic influence. He strapped it to his forehead and powered it up. The silence that followed was violent. Her voice was gone. Her presence faded like a dream erased. For the first time in days, Darren's mind was quiet, his own thoughts loud and clear. Painful, messy, but his. Sira stepped back, one foot behind the other, as if she were the one who had been struck. She tried to speak again, but her voice didn't reach him. It bounced off the wall in his brain. He stood tall now, breathing heavily. "You said you wanted my surrender," he said. "But if you take it, it's not real." His heart beat wildly, but his hands were steady. "I'm not your puppet." She said nothing. Her body stayed still, but her eyes dimmed, her glow faded. It was like watching a star collapse slowly, quietly, with no explosion, just endless silence. Without a word, she turned and walked away. This time she didn't float, didn't shine. She moved like someone who had just lost everything they never admitted they needed. Darren stayed alone in that room for hours, hearing nothing but the hum of machines and the faint buzz of the jammer. He thought he'd feel free, thought he'd feel strong again, but all he felt was cold. When he finally turned the jammer off, the silence lingered. She didn't come back, didn't whisper, didn't flood his thoughts with color and warmth. The station felt like a graveyard. That night, he tried to sleep alone, but the bed felt too big, the air too dry. His body trembled with the absence of her presence. His mind felt clean, but also empty, like he had burned out the part that knew joy. He saw her again the next day, sitting in the crystal cave where they had first met. She looked smaller now, knees pulled close to her chest, eyes dull and quiet. no glow, no fire. Just a girl made of light that had forgotten how to shine. He walked toward her, but stopped just before reaching the crystal platform. I needed space, he said softly, but not because I hate you. Her eyes lifted slightly, just enough to meet his. I don't want to be used, he said. I want to be chosen, and I want to choose back. Sira stared at him for a long time, then finally spoke, her voice weak, raw. Then stop fighting me and start feeling me. And in that moment, Darren stepped forward, not as a servant, not as prey, but as a man offering himself freely. His hand reached hers, and this time, there was no command, no pressure, only invitation. Willing servant or secret master? Sira did not speak when Darren's hand touched hers, but her eyes widened just slightly, for the first time. The connection between them was not a flood. It was a slow wave, rising and falling, calm and full. A thought. He expected her to push, to pour herself into his mind again, like a tide swallowing sand. But she didn't. She simply stayed still, letting him feel the beat of her pulse under his fingertips. I don't want to lose myself, he said quietly, but I also don't want to lose you. Sira looked at him with something new respect. Her lips didn't move, but the warmth in the air said enough. You never lost yourself. Her voice echoed gently inside. You just never realized you could lead. Darren blinked, confused. Lead? He asked. I thought you were the one in control. Sira smiled for the first time without power in her eyes, only emotion. I guided you, she said. But you let me. Your will always had strength. I only showed it how to surrender safely. He sat beside her, shoulder brushing hers. This time, there was no command to kneel, no pull in his thoughts, only silence. And yet it felt louder than every whisper she had ever planted in his mind. Darren closed his eyes and reached into the bond, not with fear, but curiosity. He searched for her thoughts, and for the first time she didn't shield them. He felt her memories open like doors. He saw her childhood on a dying moon, her people training to connect minds, to lead through seduction and empathy. He saw her rise through ranks, not by dominance, but by understanding others so deeply that they gave themselves willingly. Then he saw her fall betrayed by another who feared how easily she could make even enemies love her. Frozen for centuries, alone, her thoughts silent, her touch forgotten. She had waited for someone who could survive her truth. When he opened his eyes, she was already crying, silent tears glowing against her cheeks. He reached out and wiped one away, and her body trembled softly at the contact, not from fear but from relief. You're not my toy, Darren said firmly. Not my queen either. He paused, then took her hand fully. You're my partner if you still want to be. Her head dropped slightly, and she whispered, I've always wanted that. I just never knew how to ask. Over the next few days, things changed between them. The power no longer flowed one way. Their bond was now like a shared current, equal in strength, equal in choice. She smiled more, but with gentleness, not control. He walked freely through the station, no longer avoiding mirrors, no longer afraid of who was in control of his own mind. And she stayed beside him, not floating, not towering, but walking, matching his pace. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they laughed. He even taught her to speak aloud more often. Her voice was soft, careful, but real, and every time she tried, it made Darren smile like he'd discovered a new star. One evening, she asked him to enter her memories again, not just to see, but to shape. She guided him into a vision of her old world, and this time, he wasn't just watching. He was standing beside her, altering the sky, shifting the wind, sharing the dream. You're learning, she whispered. You're not just resisting or surrendering anymore, you're guiding. Darren didn't reply with words. Instead, he kissed her forehead gently and let his thoughts speak for him. In that dream, they built something new, a home not of metal or crystal, but feeling. Every choice was shared, every emotion balanced. It was not dominance or submission anymore, it was trust. When they woke, she looked at him differently, Her eyes glowed, yes, but not with power, with peace. She took his hand and placed it over her chest again, and for the first time, he felt her heartbeat sync with his. "I thought I needed a servant," she whispered, "but I really needed someone who would never kneel, someone who would stand with me, not below me." Darren squeezed her hand and whispered back, "I never wanted to fight you, I just didn't want to disappear." And now, as they sat side by side beneath the stars pouring in through the station window, they both knew what came next would not be one taking from the other, but two becoming more together than either could alone. The new bond, neither slave nor master asterisk. The signal that once echoed from the cave had changed. It was no longer calling for help or control. It pulsed with something new, balance. For days the frequency grew quieter, calmer, until even the machines in the station began to hum in harmony. Darren stood in the cave again, the same place where he had first touched her crystal prison. The cold still bit at his skin, but he no longer feared it. Sira stood across from him, her silver robe gone, now wearing simple white, plain, soft, human in form. "This is where I woke," she said, her voice no longer inside his mind, but aloud, fragile and beautiful. "But I wasn't alive until you chose me, not with weakness, not with fear, but with freedom." Darren listened, silent, letting her words settle. "I was made to lead," she said, "but I was never taught how to share." She stepped closer, the wind brushing her hair behind her shoulders. "You never knelt, and yet you gave me more than any who did." Darren smiled gently. "Because I wanted to," he said, "not because I was forced to." He held out his hand, not as command, not as surrender, but as a bridge, open and waiting. She took it without hesitation, and in that moment, something deeper than thought flowed between them. No pull, no push, just connection, two souls meeting in the middle, no one higher, no one lower. The bond lit up again, but not like before. It wasn't overwhelming. It was clear. Darren could feel her thoughts, but they no longer invaded. They waited, patient, like a door left open, and she could feel his, still full of doubt and wonder and human stubbornness. But this time, she embraced that chaos, not as something to fix, but something to cherish. They returned to the station hand in hand, and every hallway that once echoed with cold silence now felt warm, even alive. The lights no longer flickered with Sira's presence. They welcomed her. Darren activated the console, this time without fear of her influence. "Are you sure?" he asked, looking at the signal pad. "If I reconnect this, they'll know we're alive. Earth will come." Sira nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid of being seen," she said. "Not anymore. If they ask who I am, tell them I am not your prisoner or your conqueror." She looked up, eyes glowing with calm fire. "Tell them I am your equal." With one press, the signal went out, clear and clean. Darren sat beside her in the comms room, watching the stars move across the screen. Earth would answer soon, but for now they had peace. That night, they lay together without words. No whispers in the mind, just skin against skin, heartbeat against heartbeat. Her body no longer shimmered like a mystery. It felt real, present, wanted. Darren stroked her cheek gently and said, "I never imagined this, not on this frozen rock. Not with anyone, especially not someone like you." Sira laughed softly and replied, "You're not what I imagined either, human." She reached up and touched his temple lightly. "But now that I've seen your mind, I never want to be without it." He didn't answer. He just leaned forward and kissed her, their first kiss without control, without confusion, just choice. In the morning, the comm screen blinked. Earth Command had received the signal. Darren read the response slowly. Requesting full status. Unregistered life form detected. Confirm risk level. He looked at her and smiled. "What should I say?" he asked. Sira looked at him with eyes soft as mist. "Tell them the truth," she said. "Tell them you met someone not dangerous but different. Someone who came back to life because of you." Darren typed each word with care. Status stable. Unregistered life form is companion. No threat, no control. Just two beings learning to live together. He hit send, knowing it would raise questions, but he didn't care. Outside the station, the snow stopped for the first time in weeks. The wind died down. The sky cleared just enough to let twin moons shine through. Sierra stepped outside barefoot, looking up with wonder. This world is no longer dead. She whispered, not because of me, not because of power, but because of a man who refused to kneel until I no longer needed him to. Darren walked beside her, and together they watched the sky begin to glow. No more toys, no more thrones. No more masters, just two minds, wrapped in each other, not as captives, but as something stronger than any hypnotic pull. Partners bound by trust, not power.